The great hall of the space station was filled with cheers, voices echoing through the tall metal walls, bright white lights shining from above, soldiers standing in formation, and citizens gathering to celebrate the return of their heroes. In the center stood one man, a human soldier, tired from battle, his armor scratched, his face carrying the marks of sleepless nights. He had fought hard at the border worlds, facing enemies no one thought he could defeat, and today he was being rewarded. The commander raised his hand and silence fell across the crowd. His voice was proud and heavy as he announced, "For bravery and loyalty, for risking his life to protect our alliance, we present him with the highest honor." The soldier expected maybe a medal, maybe credits, or even a new ship. That was what he imagined. That was what he thought was coming. But instead, the commander stepped aside, and two guards appeared, dragging someone forward with chains. The hall gasped. Some clapped, some smiled. But the soldier froze. In front of him knelt a young alien girl, thin, fragile, her skin pale with strange glowing lines running along her arms. A heavy metal collar sat around her neck, humming with cruel energy. She was chained at her wrists and ankles, her bare feet scraping against the cold floor. Her eyes lifted slowly, and they were the most haunting eyes he had ever seen. They were full of fear, sadness, and a quiet question. "This," the commander declared loudly, "is your reward, a collared pet from the conquered tribes. She belongs to you now." The hall erupted into cheers. People whistled and clapped, shouting praises as if this was the most normal thing in the galaxy. Soldiers thumped their chests, proud of the tradition. Citizens nodded, happy to see the Empire display power, but the human soldier stood frozen. His chest tightened, his throat felt dry. He looked at the alien girl, at her trembling hands, her lowered head, and something inside him twisted. She was not a pet. She was not some prize to display. She was alive, breathing and suffering. He could see the bruises on her wrists where the chains had rubbed her skin raw. He could see how her lips trembled as she tried not to cry in front of the crowd. He could see how small she looked under the bright lights. The soldier's heart pounded in his chest, louder than the clapping around him. The guards pushed her closer, forcing her to kneel at his feet. The collar's glow pulsed like a cruel reminder of ownership. The soldier clenched his fists. Everyone expected him to smile, to nod, to accept this gift. But he could not move. He could not speak. He could only stare at her. And in that silence, in that single moment, her eyes met his. It was only a second, but it was enough. He saw the plea in her eyes, the silent scream for help. He saw how she wanted to live, how she wanted freedom, how she wanted someone, anyone, to see her as more than a chained animal. And for the first time in a long time, the soldier felt ashamed. The commander smiled, mistaking his silence for awe. "Take good care of your prize," he said. "It is an honor to own one of them." The crowd clapped again. The guards placed the chain in his hand, cold and heavy. The alien girl flinched when the chain moved, her shoulders tightening, her breath shallow. The soldier's hand trembled. He did not want to hold it. He did not want this moment. He wanted to drop the chain, to shout at them, to tell everyone this was wrong. But the eyes of the crowd were on him, and he knew that even a whisper of disobedience could bring punishment, not just for him but for her too. He swallowed his anger and forced himself to stand tall as he led her away through the corridor, the cheers fading behind him. The weight of the chain burned in his hand. The girl stumbled, weak from hunger or exhaustion, but she kept moving. She did not speak, only looked at the floor as though speaking would bring more pain. And yet, every step they took together, the soldier felt the truth growing stronger in his chest. This was not a reward. This was not an honor. This was a curse. Inside his quarters, the silence was louder than the cheers. The alien girl sat on the floor, still chained, her arms wrapped around her knees. The collar glowed faintly, a cruel circle of control. She glanced at him only once, her lips parting as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, she lowered her head again, defeated. The soldier sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the chain in his hand. His mind was heavy, his chest was tight. He thought about the look in her eyes, about the crowd cheering, about the commander's smile, and he whispered to himself, his voice shaking, "This is wrong." And though he did not know it yet, though the world outside still celebrated, that single thought was the beginning of something greater. It was the start of a choice that would change not only his life, but hers, and maybe even the galaxy. The room was quiet, too quiet. Only the faint hum of the space station's engines could be heard through the walls. The soldier sat at the edge of his bunk, staring at the alien girl who now rested on the cold floor. She had not moved much since they entered, her body curled into itself, her arms hugging her knees, the chain coiled loosely beside her. Her glowing collar still pulsed, a cruel reminder that freedom was far away. He wanted to say something, anything, but words felt empty in his throat. What could he say to someone who had been treated like property? What could he say to someone who had been given away like a toy in front of thousands? She did not know his language, and even if she did, would she believe his voice, or would she think he was just another captor? The alien girl lifted her head slightly, her eyes meeting his for only a moment before she looked away again. Her gaze was filled with fear, but also something else, a deep sadness that pierced through him like a blade. Her lips trembled, as though she wanted to speak, but no sound came, only silence, broken by her uneven breathing. The soldier's hands tightened into fists. He wanted to smash the collar, to break the chain, to tear apart the cruel system that had brought her to him. But he knew it was not that simple. The collar was designed with alien tech, dangerous, impossible to remove without the right tools. And even if he somehow freed her, what then? She would be hunted, chained again, or worse, killed. Still, he could not ignore the truth that weighed on him. She was not a pet, not a prize, not some treasure to keep. She was a person, and in her silence, she was begging him for something more powerful than words. She was begging him for freedom. He stood and walked closer, slowly, careful not to startle her. Her shoulders stiffened, her breathing quickened. She pressed herself against the wall like a cornered animal. His heart broke at the sight. He crouched down, lowering himself to her level, and spoke softly. "I won't hurt you." Of course, she could not understand the words, but maybe, just maybe, she could understand the tone. And he set the chain gently on the floor, letting it slip from his hand. His fingers moved away slowly, showing her he did not intend to pull it. She looked at him again, her glowing eyes uncertain. Minutes passed like hours, and still neither of them moved much. Finally, the soldier reached for a small ration pack from his bag. He unwrapped the food bar and placed it on the floor between them. Then he sat back, giving her space. She hesitated, staring at the bar, then at him, then back at the bar. Hunger won over fear. Her thin hands reached out shakily, grabbing the food. She ate quickly, almost desperately, crumbs falling from her lips. The soldier said nothing. He only watched, guilt swirling in his chest. How long had she been starving? How many nights had she gone without food? How many times had she begged with her eyes, just like she did now? When she finished, she held the empty wrapper close, as if even scraps were precious to her. Her hands trembled, not just from weakness, but from emotion. She looked at him again, and this time her eyes lingered longer. It was not trust, not yet, but it was not the same fear as before. It was something fragile, something small, like a spark in the dark. That night he lay on his bunk, but he did not sleep. He watched her, watched the way she curled into herself like a child, watched the faint glow of her collar cast shadows on the walls. The chain rattled softly whenever she shifted, a sound that stabbed his heart each time. He wondered how many others were collared like her, how many lived their lives in silence, their pleas unheard. He thought about the commander's words, "Take good care of your prize," and bile rose in his throat. She was not a prize. She was not some reward. She was a prisoner of cruelty, a victim of a system built on power and fear. He could not change the galaxy tonight, but maybe, just maybe, he could change her world. As the hours passed, he whispered into the quiet room, knowing she could not understand. "I don't want this either." His voice was soft, filled with guilt. "I will find a way. I promise." She did not stir, but he imagined that deep down, some part of her heard him, some part of her believed him. In the morning, the routine of the station continued outside his quarters. People worked, ships docked, soldiers marched. Life moved forward as if nothing was wrong. But inside his room, the soldier faced a storm. He watched the girl, her silent plea burning in his mind. He could not ignore it anymore. He knew he had to make a choice soon, a choice that would either chain him to the system forever or set him against it. And as the alien girl's eyes followed him quietly, filled with the same question as before, he realized the silence between them was not empty. It was louder than any voice. It was a plea that could not be ignored. The soldier woke to the sound of metal rattling. His eyes opened slowly, and there she was, the alien girl, still chained, still curled near the wall. Her thin body shook with each breath. The collar around her neck glowed faintly, a cruel reminder that she was not free. For a moment he lay still, listening to the quiet. Then the memory of last night returned. The way she had eaten the ration bar like it was the first meal in weeks. The way her eyes had begged him without words. He sat up, running a hand through his hair. His chest felt heavy, his mind restless. He had always obeyed orders, always followed rules, always believed in the system. But now, looking at her, all of that felt hollow. How could he follow rules that allowed this? How could he stand by while a living being was treated like this? The girl stirred and glanced at him. Her glowing eyes were cautious, yet curious. He raised his hand slowly, showing he held nothing. "It's okay," he whispered, though he knew she could not understand. He pointed to the collar, his eyes softened. "I'll find a way." The collar was no simple lock. It was alien technology, humming with energy, a mix of control and pain, designed not only to bind but to remind the wearer of their helplessness. He had seen such collars before, but never so close. He had heard rumors that if you tampered with it the wrong way, it could shock the wearer, even kill them. That was why nobody dared touch them. That was why slaves stayed chained for life, but he could not ignore the fire inside him. Every time he looked at her, the chain in his hand felt heavier. Every time she curled into herself, his guilt grew sharper. He could not keep living like this. He could not keep pretending. He left his quarters and made his way to the lower decks of the station. The air there was thick with smoke, oil, and the sharp scent of burning wires. Mechanics and engineers worked in cramped corners, sparks flying from tools. He walked with purpose, blending into the noise. At a small shop tucked behind metal crates, he found what he needed. Stolen tools, forbidden devices, things that could dismantle alien tech. The merchant eyed him carefully. "Looking for trouble, soldier?" the man asked, his voice low. The soldier's jaw tightened. "Looking for freedom," he answered. His credits were enough to buy the tools, but it was not the cost that weighed on him. It was the risk. If anyone saw what he was carrying, he could be arrested, stripped of rank, even executed. Back in his quarters, the girl looked up as he entered, her eyes following the bag in his hands. He set it down gently, sitting across from her. He pulled out the small devices, cutters, scanners, stabilizers, each tool gleaming under the dim light. She tilted her head, confusion flickering across her face. He pointed to the collar again, then to the tools, his voice steady though his heart raced. "I'm going to help you." Her eyes widened. She shook her head. Ed quickly, fear flashing in her expression. She touched the collar, then mimed pain. Her lips trembled, as if she was warning him, begging him not to try. He hesitated. His hands froze. The risk was real. If he failed, it could hurt her, maybe kill her. But then he remembered the way she hugged the food wrapper last night as if it were treasure. He remembered the way her eyes held silent desperation. He remembered the way the commander had smiled while calling her a prize. His anger flared. No, he thought. She deserves more than this. She deserves to live. With trembling hands, he lifted the scanner. Its blue light washed over the collar, numbers and alien symbols flashing on the display. His mind raced, trying to piece together what little he understood of the tech. The girl pressed herself against the wall, watching him, her breathing quick. He spoke softly. "Trust me." Even though he wasn't sure if he trusted himself, he adjusted the cutter, its edge glowing red. One wrong move and it could all be over. Sweat rolled down his forehead. His hands shook. He had faced enemies on battlefields, stared death in the eye. But this was different. This was not about survival. This was about choice, about doing what was right. The cutter touched the collar. A spark hissed. The girl flinched, a small gasp escaping her lips. His heart nearly stopped, but the collar held steady. The device beeped, signaling a weak point. He exhaled, his jaw tight. He moved the cutter carefully, slowly, each second feeling like an eternity. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The hum of the collar grew faint, then stronger, then faint again. It was like wrestling with a beast made of light and energy. His focus was absolute, every movement precise. He did not blink, did not breathe too deeply. He could not afford a mistake. The girl's hands trembled against the floor. Her eyes never left him. For the first time, there was more than fear in them. There was hope, fragile and flickering. But it was there, finally. With a sharp crack, the collar's glow flickered and dimmed. A hiss of smoke rose. The device beeped one last time before falling silent. The collar loosened, sliding slightly against her neck. He pulled the cutter back, his breath shaking. He whispered, "Almost there." He reached for the last tool, a stabilizer meant to absorb the energy. He placed it against the collar and pressed. A low hum filled the room. Then, click, the collar fell open, landing on the floor with a dull metallic thud. For a moment, silence ruled. The girl's hands flew to her neck, her fingers brushing over bare skin. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Her lips parted as tears filled her glowing eyes. She looked at him, no longer with just fear, but with something new, something powerful. He sat back, exhausted, staring at the broken collar on the floor. His chest ached, his heart pounded. He had done it. He had broken the chains. He had taken the first step into danger, and though he knew the risk was greater than ever, though he knew the entire station could turn against him, he also knew one thing with certainty. He would never let her be chained again. The collar lay broken on the floor, its faint glow fading into nothing. The soldier stared at it, chest heaving, sweat running down his face. He could hardly believe it. For so long he had thought these collars were unbreakable, yet there it was, open, powerless. A cruel device turned into scrap. The alien girl's hands stayed pressed against her neck, feeling the bare skin where metal had trapped her for who knows how long. Her glowing eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, they were not only tears of fear, they were tears of freedom. She looked at him, her lips trembling as though she wanted to speak, but all that came out was a sharp, shaky breath. He lowered the tools, his hands shaking, his heart still raced with fear, not from the collar now, but from what would come next. Breaking it was not just an act of compassion, it was an act of rebellion. The moment anyone discovered what he had done, they would not forgive it. They would not look at him as a hero anymore. They would see him as a traitor. But as he met the alien girl's gaze, none of that mattered. For the first time since she was given to him, there was light in her eyes, fragile but real. The silence in the room stretched long, broken only by the sound of her chains clinking as she shifted. The collar was gone, but her wrists and ankles were still bound. The soldier reached for the cutters again, his fingers brushing the tools. She flinched at first, her body tensing. Then she hesitated, her glowing eyes softening, slowly nodding. He moved carefully, bringing the cutter to the shackle on her wrist. Sparks jumped as the metal resisted, but the device hissed and cut through. The shackle fell away with a heavy clink. She gasped softly, her freed hand rising to touch her skin where the shackle had been. It left a deep red mark, raw and bruised. She winced, but her lips curled upward in the smallest hint of relief. One by one, he worked through the chains, his movements slow, careful. Each cut was another act of defiance, another step deeper into danger. The sound of falling metal echoed in the room, until finally the last shackle dropped. The chain were gone, scattered across the floor. The alien girl sat still for a moment, as though she could not believe it. Her body shook, her hands hovering over her freed ankles, her glowing eyes shimmering with tears. Then she moved, slowly stretching her arms, wincing as blood rushed back into muscles that had been bound too long. She lifted her face, her lips parting, and though her voice was weak, it was filled with wonder. A single word escaped, foreign, yet clear: free. The soldier's chest tightened. He had not expected her to speak. He had not expected her voice to sound so fragile, yet so alive. He swallowed hard, his own throat tight. "Yes," he whispered softly, even though she could not understand. "You're free." But freedom inside his quarters was not enough. They were still on the station, still surrounded by people who would see her as property, still watched by eyes that would notice her missing collar. For now, she could not walk outside without drawing suspicion. For now, her freedom was only within these walls, but it was a start, and it was everything. The girl's glowing eyes softened as she studied him. She tilted her head, confusion flickering across her face. Why had he done this? Why would a human risk everything for her? She did not understand, but she felt something inside her chest stir. A warmth she had not felt in years. That night, she did not curl up on the floor. Instead, she shifted closer to his bunk, resting against the wall but nearer to him. Her breathing was still uneven, her body still weak, but there was less fear now. He lay awake again, watching her, his mind turning with questions. How long until someone noticed? How long until the commander came to check on his prize? What would happen when they found out the truth? But when he looked at her, her head leaning lightly against the wall, her hands no longer chained, he knew he would not regret it, no matter the cost. He could not put the chains back, he could not pretend anymore. Hours passed, and somewhere between the humming of the station and the quiet of the room, she shifted closer, her hand trembling but steady reached toward his arm. She did not grip it tightly, only rested her fingers against him as though to test if he was real. His breath caught. He looked down at her. Her glowing eyes met his, not with fear this time, but with gratitude. Neither spoke, neither moved. The moment stretched long, filled with unspoken words. He felt the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him, but also something else, something lighter, something worth carrying. In the morning, he cleaned the broken pieces of the collar and shackles, hiding them beneath his bunk. His mind already raced with plans. He could not stop here. If he wanted her to survive, he had to be ready, ready to face the questions, ready to fight if needed. He looked at her again, her eyes watching him closely, still wary but no longer lifeless. For the first time, she smiled, faint, small, but real. It was the kind of smile that could break walls, the kind of smile that reminded him why he had taken this risk. He knew now what he had to do. He would not just free her from the collar, he would free her from the world that had placed it there. And as the lights of the station flickered above them, he realized this was no longer just about a soldier and a slave. This was about something greater, a choice that could change everything. The station's grand hall was alive again, banners hanging from the high steel beams, crowds filling the seats, soldiers marching in rows. The air carried the same sound as before, clapping, laughter, voices filled with pride. But this time the soldier's heart felt heavier than ever. He stood at the edge of the gathering, the alien girl at his side, no longer bound by chains, the broken collar hidden away. She moved quietly, her glowing eyes scanning the faces around them. Fear still clung to her steps, but there was also a quiet strength. For the first time she walked beside him, not dragged in chains, not kneeling on the floor, but standing, fragile yet free. Whispers spread through the crowd the moment they saw her. Some leaned forward in shock, others frowned. A collared pet was supposed to stay chained, controlled, displayed like a trophy. But here she was, collar-free, her wrists bare, her steps her own. The commander's smile faltered when he noticed. His voice boomed, "Where is the collar?" The soldier's jaw tightened. He could feel every eye in the hall pressing on him, waiting, judging. His heart pounded, but he stood tall. His hand rested gently on the alien girl's shoulder, steadying her trembling. "She doesn't need it," the soldier said, his voice loud enough to carry across the hall. The crowd gasped. Some laughed nervously. Others muttered in disbelief. The commander's face darkened. "What are you saying, soldier? That creature is a prize, a pet. You were trusted with honor, and this is how you treat it." The alien girl pressed closer to the soldier, her thin hands clutching his sleeve. Her eyes glimmered with fear, but there was also something else. Trust. Trust that he would not abandon her. Trust that he would not let her be chained again. The commander barked, "Guards!" At once, armored men stepped forward, their weapons gleaming. The air grew tense. The soldier's heart pounded harder. He could almost feel the weight of the galaxy pushing against him. His career, his rank, his future, all of it stood on the edge of a blade. And then it happened. Before anyone could move, before the guards reached them, the alien girl suddenly broke from his side. She stumbled forward, her steps shaky, her glowing eyes filled with tears. She turned in front of everyone, and she hugged him. The hall froze. The crowd went silent. The soldier himself could barely breathe. He looked down and saw her arms wrapped tightly around him, her face pressed against his chest. Her small frame shook as silent sobs escaped her. Her tears soaked into his uniform. Gasps filled the air. Soldiers stared wide-eyed. Citizens covered their mouths. Even the guards hesitated, their weapons still raised but their hands trembling. For all their years of seeing these aliens as pets, as prizes, as objects, none of them had ever witnessed this. A collared alien hugging her supposed master, not out of fear, not out of obedience, but out of gratitude, out of choice. The commander's face twisted with anger. His voice cracked like thunder. "This is disgraceful. End this at once." But the soldier did not let go. His arms moved slowly, gently, and he hugged her back. His voice carried strong across the silence. "She is not a prize. She is not a pet. She is free." The words echoed like a strike of lightning. They cut through the hall, through the banners, through the silence that followed. The alien girl tightened her grip on him as if those words had broken the last chain still around her heart. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some shouted in anger, calling him a traitor. Others gasped in awe. Their voices clashed, filling the chamber with noise. But through the storm, one truth stood clear. A human had defied the system before them all. The commander's eyes burned with fury. His hand rose, signaling the guards. But the hesitation in their eyes was clear. They had seen what everyone else had seen. They had seen the tears, the hug, the freedom, and something deep inside them shook. The soldier stood firm, his voice steady, though danger surrounded him. "You can punish me if you want, but I will not chain her again." His words struck harder than any weapon. His chest rose and fell as he looked at the officials, the soldiers, the citizens. "If this is honor, then I want no part of it." The alien girl clung to him, trembling, but there was a faint smile breaking through her tears. For the first time, she had been seen, truly seen, not as property, but as a person, and the galaxy had witnessed it. The guards looked at each other, their weapons still raised but their hands shaking. Some lowered their eyes, unable to meet his. The commander shouted again, his voice cracking, "Seize them!" But the order rang hollow in the silence that followed. The soldier's arms tightened around the girl as he whispered low, meant only for her, "You're safe." She did not know the words, but she knew the meaning. She could feel it in the way he held her, in the way his heart beat strong beneath her cheek. The hall remained a storm of voices, but nothing could erase what had been seen. A slave had hugged her so-called master, and he had embraced her back. The system had been cracked in front of everyone, and though the fight was far from over, though danger loomed, hope had been born. And in that single hug, under the harsh lights of the station, something changed forever. The hall erupted like a storm. Voices clashed against each other, some shouting in rage, some gasping in shock. Soldiers shifted uneasily in their lines. Citizens pointed, their faces a mix of fear and disbelief. At the center of it all stood the soldier. R and the alien girl still holding each other as if the chaos could not touch them. The commander's face turned red with fury. His voice thundered, "Enough! This is treason!" He slammed his hand against the railing of the high platform. His eyes blazed as he pointed toward the soldier. "Arrest him! Seize the alien! Show the people that defiance has no place here!" The guards stepped forward, their weapons raised, but their feet moved slower than before. Their eyes flicked to the girl, still clinging to the soldier, trembling, but unbroken. They had seen the tears, the hug, the choice. It was no longer the image of a chained pet. It was the image of a person who wanted to live. The soldier's voice cut through the noise, strong and clear. "If you want to call me a traitor, then do it. If you want to strip me of honor, then take it. But I will not let you chain her again." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some shouted traitor, others whispered hero. The soldier's words spread like fire, and for a moment the hall itself seemed to tremble with the weight of them. The commander's fury deepened. He barked at the guards, "Move! That is an order!" But the hesitation grew heavier. Some lowered their weapons, some exchanged nervous looks. For years they had obeyed without question, but now the question was alive in their hearts. Why should they chain someone who looked so human, so alive? Why should they call loyalty the act of enslaving the innocent? The alien girl pulled her face from the soldier's chest, her glowing eyes wet with tears. She looked around the hall, her lips parting as though she wanted to speak. For a moment silence fell, as if the galaxy itself waited for her voice. Her throat trembled, and then she whispered the only word she knew in their tongue. "Free." The word echoed, small yet powerful. It rippled through the silence like a spark across dry grass. The crowd shifted. The citizens looked at each other. Some frowned in confusion, but others felt something stir deep inside, a thought they had buried for years, a thought that maybe, just maybe, the system was wrong. The commander's fists clenched. "Silence her now," he roared, but his voice cracked with desperation. He could see control slipping through his hands. The soldier raised his arm, shielding the girl. His eyes locked with the commander's, fierce and unyielding. "You cannot silence her," he said. "You cannot silence the truth, not anymore." The hall shook with noise, half in rage, half in awe. Guards wavered, unsure. Officials whispered nervously on the high platform. The commander slammed his hand again, his voice like thunder. "Do you all forget who you serve? Do you all forget the price of disobedience? This man spits on your loyalty. He disgraces your honor. He stands with an alien against his own people." But his words did not land the same as before. His voice sounded hollow, desperate. His power slipped with every second the soldier stood tall. The soldier lifted his chin, his voice stronger than ever. "If honor means chaining the helpless, then honor is a lie. If loyalty means cruelty, then loyalty is broken. I fought for peace. I fought for life, and I will not stand here and pretend this is right." The alien girl gripped his sleeve tighter, her glowing eyes never leaving his face. For the first time, she was not Heidi. Isung. She was not curling into herself. She stood beside him, trembling but strong. A murmur swept through the crowd. Soldiers whispered, citizens shook their heads, some even nodded quietly. A change was stirring, fragile but real. The commander could see it, and it filled him with rage. He roared, "This is rebellion. Do you all want to be traitors? Do you want the galaxy to collapse? Obey me. Seize them both." His voice cracked, and his command no longer carried the strength it once had. The guards stood frozen, their weapons lowered little by little. Their eyes fell on the soldier and the girl, on the broken collar, on the hug, and though fear gripped them, something else began to grow. Doubt. The soldier took a step forward, his arm still around the girl. His voice rang through the chaos, calm yet powerful. "You call me a traitor, but one day you will call me human. One day you will see what we all forgot. That compassion is stronger than fear." The hall fell into a stunned silence. The commander's mouth opened, but no words came. His face pale with fury, his power slipping like sand through his fingers. The alien girl leaned into the soldier, whispering softly in her own tongue. He could not understand her words, but he felt their meaning. He felt her trust, her gratitude, her hope. The crowd had seen enough. The system had cracked. Even if the commander regained control for now, even if punishment awaited, the truth had been shown. The soldier knew danger was close. He knew the fight was not finished. But as he looked at the girl, as she looked back with glowing eyes filled not with fear but with strength, he knew he would not step back. Not now, not ever. And in that moment, standing before the furious commander, before the divided crowd, he made his silent vow. No matter the cost, he would protect her. He would protect her freedom. He would stand. The hall eventually emptied, but the echoes of that moment remained. The soldier and the alien girl had been taken away, not with cheers, but with silence. Soldiers escorted them through the long metallic corridors, their boots heavy on the floor. Yet even as they were led like prisoners, something had shifted in the air. The people had seen the truth, and once seen, it could not be unseen. The cell they were thrown into was cold and dim, metal walls pressing in. A single light flickered above them, casting long shadows. The alien girl sat close to the soldier, her glowing eyes wide with worry. He sat beside her, his back straight, his heart steady. Though the future was uncertain, he did not regret what he had done. Hours passed. Guards came and went, whispering among themselves. Their eyes lingered on the girl, no longer with pride or cruelty, but with unease. They had seen her tears, her hug, her whispered plea for freedom, and those memories clung to them. One guard even turned his gaze away, unable to meet her eyes. The system was still strong, but doubt had already begun to grow. The commander arrived at last, his face carved with fury. His voice was sharp. "You've thrown away everything, your rank, your honor, your future. And for what? For a creature that was never meant to be more than a prize?" The soldier rose slowly, his arm instinctively shielding the girl. His voice was calm but unyielding. "For her life, for her freedom, that is worth more than medals, more than your empty honor." The commander sneered. "You speak as if compassion will save you. The law is stronger than your feelings. The system is older than your defiance. One man cannot change the galaxy." But even as he said it, his voice trembled, because deep down he had seen the eyes of his people. He had heard their silence, and he knew the lie was beginning to crumble. The alien girl reek. Heed for the soldier's hand, her thin fingers gripping his tightly. She lifted her face, her glowing eyes shining with courage. She whispered again, the same word she had spoken in the hall. "Free." The commander's jaw clenched. His fury battled with fear. For the first time he turned away without another word. The door slammed shut, but the sound no longer carried the weight it once had. Days passed in confinement, but the story of the hall spread like fire. Citizens whispered about the soldier who defied the commander. Soldiers spoke quietly about the alien who hugged him. Some mocked, but many wondered. If one alien could feel gratitude, if one human could see her as more than a pet, then what else had they been blind to? The station grew restless. The old order was still in place, but its hold was weaker, cracks appearing with each passing day. The commander tried to silence the whispers, but whispers have a way of becoming storms. One evening, the door to the cell opened. A group of guards entered, not with weapons drawn but with hesitation. Their leader stepped forward, his voice low. "We were ordered to take you to trial, but some of us have seen enough. Some of us cannot keep pretending. We are giving you a chance. Leave before it is too late." The soldier's eyes narrowed. "Why help us?" The guard hesitated, his voice tight. "Because once, I thought the same as the commander, but when she spoke, when she hugged you, I could not sleep that night. I kept hearing her voice, free, and I realized I could no longer call it weakness." The alien girl clutched the soldier's sleeve, hope flickering in her glowing eyes. The soldier nodded slowly. "Then we will go." They were led through hidden corridors, past doors rarely used until they reached a docking bay. A small shuttle waited, its engines humming softly. The guard's voice trembled. "This is all we can give you. Escape, live, show others what we were too afraid to believe." The soldier placed a hand on the guard's shoulder. "You have already done more than enough." Then he turned, guiding the alien girl into the shuttle. She moved with uncertainty, her steps slow, but her eyes alive. She looked back once, meeting the guard's gaze, and whispered again, "Free." The engines roared to life. The shuttle lifted from the bay, slipping into the endless dark of space. The stars stretched out before them, countless and bright. The alien girl sat beside the soldier, her head resting lightly against his arm. For the first time, her lips curved into a real smile, not faint, not broken, but full. The soldier exhaled deeply, his heart heavy with the weight of what was to come, but also lighter than it had ever been. He looked at her glowing eyes, at her fragile but unyielding spirit. And he knew that this was only the beginning, because change had started, not in grand speeches, not in battles, but in a single choice, a single broken collar, a single hug. The galaxy would remember, the whispers would spread, and one day they would grow into a roar. And as the shuttle vanished into the starlit void, the soldier and the alien girl sat together in silence. Not master and pet, not soldier and prize, but human and friend, both carrying the spark of something greater than themselves, both carrying the beginning of change.